All right, so we turned in the 2024 year-end awards on MMA Junkie about a month ago. We started discussing them, prepping them, and then we unleashed them to you all. Now we've kind of gone over the big ones, right? I've talked Fajeda and Topuria to death. I'm on Team Fajeda, by the way. But we got some other ones that we want to discuss. Or who knows? Maybe we will bring that other one back because I know Danny was leading the Topuria charge. So maybe we'll butt heads. But guys, let's go to Breakout Fighter of the Year. Joaquin Buckley was the winner. Did you guys like it? What was your reaction? Danny, we'll start with you.
That was my pick, so I'm all for this being our Breakout Fighter of the Year. I know there were some other guys that had some stellar performances, but Joaquin Buckley really sort of redefined his career from just being this fun fighter that would win, lose, and every now and then give you a spectacular knockout to a legit title contender that is not too far from getting a title shot. He could be maybe even just one more fight from that. So huge year for Joaquin Buckley, and really it was his breakout year. So I'm all cool with this choice.
Now, a lot of people obviously wonder, what did he break out from? You know, from unknown to now known, or from known to title contender. Nolan King, how about you, man? How did you feel about Joaquin Buckley, and how did you interpret, the criteria, I guess, for a breakout fighter?
Yeah, that's always the big thing, man. It's just the criteria. There's so many different interpretations, right, about what that means. Did he break into the division? Did he get closest to a title fight? Did he just become popular? Is he getting, street cred? Is he getting, did he build his reputation with the fans? So I think there's a lot of different ways that you can look at it. I always kind of look at it from a talent-based perspective, but then also I do recognize like the popularity. Is he somebody that they can put into a main event, that they can put into big fights? And he's certainly done that, I think for me, in my brain going into this, it was kind of between him and Diego Lopez. And Diego obviously maybe had a little more buzz last year. Like he was becoming a fan favorite. I maybe, if it was up to me, might have leaned a little bit with him. Just I think he's like gotten himself to the point where he could be the next guy. Like I know they're going to run Topuria and Volkanovski, it sounds like, but Lopez is right there. I mean, he's the guy that's kind of solidified himself for a title fight. And then Buckley, I still think you got to have one more out of him. So it's tough though, man. I mean, I don't want to take away from Buckley's year. I think they both had really good years, and at the end of the day, it is a little bit arbitrary, and there's no right or wrong answer here. But both guys, really stellar year, 3-0, and I believe Buckley went 4-0, right?
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, for sure, man. Look, I mean, Buckley, if everyone recalls, he's the one that put that kick on Impa Kasanganay. What was that, like 3 or 4 years ago?
Like
and so he's kind of had this weird career, middleweight, but now welterweight, where he's become a beast. So yeah, the interpretation, I got asked that question a lot. Breakout as in when? Because this guy's kind of been doing this or whatever. So we're kind of trying to clarify it here, but it is subjective and it can mean a lot of things. Like you'll see when we get the comeback fighter of the year as well. It can be interpreted in many ways. But Goes, how about you, man? You okay with Joaquin Buckley?
Yeah, it was very well deserved. And I kind of, we have our criteria, but I think there's like a little bit of subplots underneath them. And I think Danny hit a good one. And it's the fact that for the longest time, we looked at this guy as like, hey, this is somebody you got to look out for, right? I think he took that jump to now become a guy that we're actually talking about. This guy could maybe win a title, right? And I think that's such a significant jump that I think he totally deserved it. And I like Nolan's Diego Lopez. I think that was kind of a name that got thrown out that we were going back and forth on. I agree with that. He's been everywhere. His career has definitely turned around. A lot of people know who he is. I had thought of Dakota Ditcheva as well. I feel like from where she was a year before to where she is today, people know her name now. But those little subplots that you do throw in there and you go, okay, but what was the level of competition brought her to that? Maybe it's a little different, right? If you look at Buckley and some of the people that Buckley went through, that's very, very difficult to do. And to do it kind of at a lower part of his career, he went through some pretty decent fighters to get to this point where now he has to face even bigger names, right? So I think it was well deserved. I think maybe Lopez was second, but I thought Buckley was the guy that deserved it.
You guys want to hear something?
Sure.
On last week's show, Goes and I weren't here, but I tuned in and then I went back and listened, whatever it is that I missed. I have been butting heads with someone about Ditcheva for literally I mean, there must be about 100 comments between him and I. He had a problem with it, with Ditcheva. I think he would take it as Ditcheva for Breakout Fighter of the Year, but he really had a problem with her as our female fighter of the year. He also didn't present anyone else, which pissed me off. I'm like, well, who are you backing? And he wouldn't give me a name, but he kept saying Kayla Harrison, which, hey, man, Kayla had a great year. Don't get me wrong. I think his had to do more with he didn't know much about Ditcheva. So I think that's why maybe he would put her in Breakout or something. But like I told him, you go 4-0 and win a major title and destroy everyone along the way, and you get someone like Talia Santos to be a part of that. Hey, man, it's all her, you know. But seriously, if you go into last week's comments, him and I are just throwing down there. If you guys want to check it out, all our shows, by the way, are banked here on our YouTube channel. So I would ask you guys to subscribe and check it out so you can check out past content. And right now, while we're at it, let's hit that like button. Newcomer of the year, guys. Oh wait, no, I want to ask you guys. Buckley, does he win a title this year? Real quick, Danny.
I feel like I've been one of the biggest, if not the biggest, Buckley supporter in sort of MMA media. So I'm gonna go with a bold prediction and say yes. Fuck it.
Nolan.
I'll say no, but he'll fight for one.
Oh, okay. So you think he comes up short against Muhammad or the winner of Muhammad and Shavkat? Who do you like in Muhammad and Shavkat?
I would. That's a tough one, man. I think I would. I don't know. I'd lean Shavkat, but also like the Ian Gary fight. It's tough, man. I'm not sure. That's a cop out answer, but
you sure had no problem telling us that Buckley wasn't going to win a title.
To me, I would lean Shavkat at this point for now. Don't hold me to it.
When you did say you didn't think Buckley would win, is it because of the Muhammad matchup? You don't think he's got something for Muhammad?
I think Bilal and Shavkat would be kind of difficult for him. And again, I think especially with the way the division is right now, I think he's beaten a lot of solid vets that have been around for a while. But for him to kind of take that step up, there's a big difference, I think, from the top four and kind of everybody else. Yeah. So I think this next matchup, if he called out Usman, if he wants that, I could see him winning that maybe, depending on where Kamaru's at. But then after that, I think the Shavkats, I think Ian Gary would be just a tricky style fight for him, and I think Bilal as well. So that's kind of where my hesitation comes.
Sometimes when someone asks me about a fighter, I just think the road to the title is where they'll come up short. And welterweight has a lot of beasts, like Jack Della Maddalena, man. He's a good fighter, but I don't know if he can get to the title just because there's so many guys you have to get through. Whereas there's other divisions that you can get there a lot quicker, and it's a lot easier to give that type of prediction. All right, Goes, does he win a title or not?
I think that he fights for one, and based off of the way he's been fighting, I think maybe he comes up short in winning a title. But here's the thing. He has shown improvement from fight to fight. So if that improvement's big enough, it wouldn't shock me. I'd be with Danny. It wouldn't shock me if he won a title. I think eventually he will. Maybe not this year.
I'm with Danny. He's going to win a title this year. I think. But if Muhammad does beat Shavkat, which I also think he will, I just think, God, he fought Leon Edwards so well. He looks pretty unbeatable right now. But he's also 36 or something like that.
Yeah, he's up there in age as well. So that time, that drop off is coming eventually.
I don't know if I told you guys about this, but this is 2025. I'm going to be an edgier goes, and I just realized that the people on this side don't have a mustache. The people on that side have a mustache. So if you two think that Buckley's going to win a title and we don't, just saying.
Bro, you guys are all talk, man. I've been putting my mustache.
I grew a mustache.
I've been putting my mustache on the line on 2024, and a lot of bets were not taken, and I don't know, man.
Goes after the draw bet. Like, to me, I retired from betting. I appreciate you putting my my stash on the line, man. But
2024 was not a good year.
There was never a bet. Like, I've never entered a bet in any walk of life that I thought was more advantageous for me. Like, what are the odds a title fight's going to end in a draw? And then you and I are signing on here with mustaches. So
it was
please keep my name out your mouth.
Was that Shevchenko and Grasso too?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
We were innocent bystanders. We got hit with shrapnel. Really bad.
Audience, I'm going to accept the fight the bet on behalf of all four of us. Danny and I will shave if Buckley doesn't win a title.
I haven't agreed to anything. Why are you just agreeing for me? What the hell?
We have a whole year to do it. A second ago, you said no one's taking the challenges.
Yeah, that doesn't mean I'm agreeing. So what am I agreeing to?
So you
You're
and
gonna
I
shave your
will.
head.
Well, I'm going to shave my mustache by the end of the week, so I really don't care. I guess it's more of a matter of maybe I'll do something crazy, go Raleigh fingers or something. But all right, look, we're falling behind. Think about it. If you guys want to discuss it, let it marinate. We'll get to it. Carlos Prates was our newcomer of the year. Your reaction to that, Nolan?
I mean, that was the right choice. You know, I think I had gone through when we first started talking about this, and before this show, I went through and updated again. He's the only guy to go 4-0 this year. You know, and just a spectacular year. I mean, he was even at the end of the year, he was in conversation to step in and fight Ian Gary. Fight Shavkat in that UFC 310 event. So he's right there. You can tell that the UFC loves him. I mean, he's got the personality, he's got the finishes, the climb has been great. A guy that came in with a tremendous amount of experience too. So I expect when he does get in and fight some adversity that he actually handles it pretty well. But just a great year for the fighting nerds. I mean, you take him out, if you took him out at 4-0, you know, John Silva would probably be the guy that would probably be the next newcomer at 3-0 in 2024. So just a really spectacular year. I mean, super entertaining and somebody that's super promotable. And one of the best acceptance videos in MMA Junkie history.
I mean,
as well.
he was celebrating. He knew he had that on lock, so he was celebrating this award. You know, as he took the video, it was amazing.
Yeah, it was funny. I'd reached out to his manager, Lucas Lutkiss, asking, you know, can we have a video? He's going to win newcomer, and he's like, man, I don't know. He's like, he's been partying a lot, like since Christmas, and I was like, that's more reason for him to like film this video. And sure enough, SIG in hand and a table full of props, he did not disappoint.
That's the guy that has a close relationship with his mom, right? When they kind of featured him, I think during one of his fights, he comes home, the mom makes him dinner or something like that. It was one of the fighting nerds, I know that, but I really like that.
It might have been him, yeah.
Yeah. And Goes and Danny, did you guys have a problem with this award here, or should we just move on? Because I think it was kind of a slam dunk, right?
Yeah, slam dunk. I mean, there's no one else that was sort of new to the UFC or sort of the big stage that made a bigger splash than Carlos Prates. He's the one that was a lock for sure.
Mm-hmm. Danny, you're being compared to Super Mario Kart in the chat, but they also said you're awesome. So
okay,
that comes from Masters of the Universe. And speaking of the chat, you can mess around like Ricky Box, who's coming through on Facebook, or you know, give us a real serious comment and question, and we're gonna feature it at the end of the show. We're doing a Q&A, like I mentioned. At the top of the show, but just so you know now, get some good questions in for us to answer them towards the end there. All right, we'll move on since Prates was kind of a slam dunk. Under the radar fight of the year, Steve Garcia. Goes, what'd you think of that one?
I actually really love that one. That was one of mine. The dude was just a wrecking ball, right? Like the judges should thank that guy. They could go get a soda and a hot dog every fight, every time he'd show up. He's so unassuming. And I think he took advantage of everything he possibly could in that year. And I mean, it's this year that we have to worry about with this guy because that camouflage is kind of gone a little bit. I think now people know who he is. They know how to prepare for a guy like that. But think about it, couldn't be any better than that, right? Just going in and completely wrecking people left and right. And then afterwards, when they give him the mic, I think he's got a lot of tools to take that next step in 2025.
Yeah, and you know, it's no disrespect to him at all, but right now some people are probably wondering who Steve Garcia is, but he's actually been kicking butt. He has been a little under the radar, but I think things are going to pick up for him in 2025. Danny and Nolan, did you guys have a problem with this one, or is this as good as you got?
Not at all. In full agreement of it. Flyweight is in need of names, and I'm surprised that like he hasn't really blown up a little bit more, which is why he makes a perfect sort of fit for this award.
What's he got? Like 5 straight KOs at lightweight, right? Some sort of a record.
Like I think he's. Where's Mike Bond when you need him?
It's some sort of a record, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I don't know.
It is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yep.
That's crazy, man. He's not under the radar anymore. That's for sure. Let's move on though to the next one. Here's where it's going to get fun and it's going to get a little spicy, perhaps. I don't know. Knockout of the year: Holloway versus Gaethje. Reaction to that, guys. We'll go back to Danny, but Danny, I'm gonna tell you that I kind of have a problem with it, and I'll tell you why. Because the KO itself, the punch, wasn't the most beautiful thing I've ever seen, the sequence was amazing, historical, the
Yeah.
event, all that. But I don't know, was it really enough, or was it just because they pointed down it was UFC 300 that this award is getting it? And I'll tell you why. Because I am on Team Fajeda for Fight of the Year, but Toporia's KO over Holloway I thought was impressive because Holloway's never been knocked out.
Yeah.
It was at a high level. So was the other one. It was, BMF fight or whatever. But man, the way he sliced him up with the body and then put him down and finished him, I like that one. I like Magomed's over Johnny Walker's, for example. Like just nice, solid punches versus this one which was more of a sequence. But I'm kind of a old school guy. What'd you think?
I mean, a lot of factors go into this, and I feel like depending on who you ask, those factors change, or at least some carry more weight than others. I think one is who you're knocking out, right? Because we've seen a lot of great knockouts in the regional scene, and let's keep it 100. Like none of those guys are going to win knockout of the year. So it's got to be like who you're knocking out, the level of competition, the circumstances of the fight, how pretty or how beautiful, I guess, the knockout is itself. So I think with all those things combined, like Justin Gage is a guy that's been hard to put away. Holloway going up from 145 to from 145 to 155, not really known to be much of a knockout artist, pointing down at the ground, literally right on the buzzer. I mean, it was like straight out of a movie. If you ask for the most memorable knockout of 2024, that's got to be it. I know just a fight later in that same card, Mr. Shama had his own knockout doing this against Jamal Hill, and that was pretty nice as well. But I think everything together, that's got to be knockout of the year. For me, that was an easy pick.
That female fighter Kong had a nice one too towards the end. Nolan, what'd you think, man? Did you like the historical significance of it all? Is that why Holloway got it here?
I mean, you guys know I always joke I'm kind of like the hipster. If you hit a flying triangle on the Bellator prelims, I'm going to fight for you to get the submission of the month and whatnot. So I would love to pick something else and push against the tide, but I can't. I think that was just one of the most incredible moments I've ever seen. The way it went down, the lead up, where it was, the stage, the sort of fight it was, and then ultimately ending with just zero defense from either guy, face plant knockout. I can't remember, like, for a fight that was maybe more of a fun fight, right? Like there were stakes, but it wasn't, this build like when we had Connor and Aldo or something. I can't remember for a fight that there wasn't that sort of attachment to it, that people were just like tuning in to get excited to watch two guys that they like fight, having that sort of crowd pop. I mean, that moment, pulling it out of the back pocket. I mean, the only other thing I can kind of think of was when Yair and Zombie fought, but nobody really knew what happened at that point. Like we had to watch the replay to see it. This, everybody knew what happened. Absolutely incredible moment. One of my top probably 10 most shocking moments that I've seen as a fan, where I just didn't expect what I saw. So it was such an easy choice this year.
But like Don Vito was saying in the chat, he was waxing him kind of for 4 rounds, and he was a pretty damaged fighter. So this thing was going to a decision. He points down. I don't even know if Gaethje was really all there. Honestly, he goes there because he knows that's his Hail Mary. Versus, I don't know, some of the other ones where both fighters were just standing there and it was early in the fight, and then boom, someone gets slept. I don't know, but the historical significance, I get it goes. What are you saying here?
I think you need to put more tape on the middle of your glasses because you're being a nerd right now. George, there's no way that when people are going through their social media and they see that 10-second clip of him pointing to the ground, him agreeing, and them just throwing blows, whether you like MMA or not, you don't even have to be a fan of MMA. That's going to grab your attention. I'm not saying what Topuria did wasn't phenomenal. What I liked about that, and maybe if you want to separate, maybe call it like finish of the year, because the setup behind it is what impressed me the most. The way he built to the finish, I thought was incredible. But if we're just talking about the sole KO, nothing beats this dude. That moment, none of us were sitting in our chairs. We all jumped up and screamed. It was insanity.
Maybe that's
who
what
knows
it was.
If something like that happens again.
Maybe it was moment of the year or highlight of the year. It deserved all the highlights and everything. But again, hey, I've been beating you up for the last 20 minutes, and most of this round, and I know you're messed up and I'm cruising to victory, but what's up? Let's get in here right now. When I'm all there, and you're like, like just trudging along here at the end. I don't know.
But would you ever doubt that from Max Holloway that he wouldn't do that in round one? Like he's just crazy, right? Like he does those types of things. So I could see if John Jones did something like that, we would say something like, well, you weren't doing that in the beginning of the fight. Max Holloway is not a guy you mess around with. He would do that from the moment the fight started.
Yeah. All right. Well, I mean, it won, and I accept it, and we move on. No big deal here. I just thought I did throw in my 2 cents. That's what we're here for. Submission of the year, guys. Chimaev over Whitaker. Now that was something else to finally get the info right on fight night and figure out why did he tap so early. He broke his jaw. Nolan, you ever seen something like that on whether it's the regional scene or anywhere else?
No, I mean, it's super rare. I mean, we've seen like, kind of rear naked chokes that go over the jaw and somebody is in pain and they tap, but I can't remember seeing that much damage, right? Like that was a very violent submission. So I think that was a good choice. I think there wasn't necessarily like super clear front runner this year, something crazy. That was it, having that violent wrinkle where you see Robert Whitaker's mouth afterwards and his teeth are all falling out of place. I think it added kind of that next level sort of boost that this submission needed to win that sort of award.
And then we find out he's been having these types of problems all along. I'm not even sure if it was a broken jaw. His palate, right, goes is what kind of got disjarred or something like that.
These teeth in the front, yeah, they move out of place.
And he says he's had a problem with it, but he's getting the surgery. But either way, I mean, who's going to question the strength of Chimaev? Were you good with it, Goes?
Yeah, totally. I mean, like Nolan said, the image of after what that looked like is just probably ingrained in all of our memories. And you think about the sport that we cover and what these fighters go through on a day-to-day basis, it's probably pretty hard to scare them, but I would think something like that would scare the hell out of the next guy that's got to fight Chimaev.
And like Mark England in the chat says, no debate, doing that to someone of Rob's caliber is unbelievable. Danny, you in agreement here with the way we went with this award?
100%. Yeah. I mean, the submission itself was brutal. Against the opponent, right? Former champion, a top dog. Not only that, but people forget now because I feel like that win reinstated a lot of the invincibility aura to Chimaev. But prior to that fight, a lot of people were just he was kind of like the laughing stock a little bit on social media. Is he going to make it? Is he going to make it? This, that. And he was kind of being made fun of. He was seeing a lot more human since he was coming off that fight with Kamaru Usman. Where is his mind at? Where is his mind at? This guy has lost his aura, this and that. And then he goes in there and destroys the jaw of Robert Whitaker in less than a round. Yeah, submission of the year, lock 100%.
Yeah. All right. I got a nice comment here from the chat, and I don't know if I've seen it before, or sorry if I can find it right now. But Hamzat's sub was impressive because of his strength, not because of his BJJ skills. I think Patty deserves this one for the technical transitions over Bobby Green. Okay,
he was my number 2.
Yeah,
that's what the chat's here for. So if you want to obviously discuss, we'll try and read some. And remember, we're doing a Q&A at the end, so right now is a good time to start getting your questions in. That's why I'm kind of scanning here. The good ones, we'll kind of paste them and have them ready for like the last 15 minutes, folks. So get those in. Mark England, Lazy Bed, Masters of the Universe. See if you guys can lead the charge. All right, the next award here is Fight of the Year. Ribovics versus Zellhuber at UFC 306. Nolan, did we get that one right?
Yeah, I think so. I again, this year was difficult. I felt like with some categories and very easy with others. This was maybe a little bit more challenging, but this was a banger. I mean, I think that in terms of entertainment and excitement, you would be hard pressed to find a better fight than this one. There was the other fight, which I actually voted for when we did our, just to kind of peel back the curtain here. We do, Mike Bond organizes these for the KO submission in the fight, and he gives us a bunch of choices and we rank them on a point system, 1 through 5. So it's not like we're all just, everybody's picking one. So I actually picked the Oralbai versus Rebecca fight, and it wasn't as exciting. Like this was a barn burner, but I think the amount of like carnage and like the grueling nature of that fight was something that was a little elevated, which I think maybe speaks more to me being a bit of a sick individual that I would lean into that. But that was one of, if you guys haven't seen the Ribovics fight, if you haven't seen the Oralbai fight, definitely go back and watch them, because I think they were fights that maybe were being overlooked on these big pay-per-view cards. And they certainly delivered. Two just absolute wars where both those guys had to dig deep, man.
When was that fight? Do you remember the event?
It's 308, I believe, in Abu Dhabi. Just really one of those fights where you're watching it and you're like, man, like these guys are probably going to feel like shit for like 3 months. Like they're externally, their faces are all sliced. They're exhausted, like swollen. Oralbai's eye was blown up like a balloon, to take a line out of Connor's book there. But just a really gnarly fight.
That was my number 2 fight as well. It was one of those where you feel like if you didn't know there were fights and they brought those guys into the emergency room, you would have thought they were in like multiple car crashes or something. They looked horrible.
Yeah.
But here's the thing, before we get to Danny, I want you to weigh in here. Okay, I'm going to almost reverse it on you guys. What about the water cooler talk? Aren't they talking about Holloway versus Gaethje because of the highlights and the finish as their fight of the year? They don't go into a deep dive like us.
Bruh.
So sometimes these types of awards, the way they go in, sometimes feel like, is it a popularity contest? Is it an image? Is it the stage? What do you think, Danny?
I saw various outlets, but specifically ESPN MMA, pick Holloway versus Gaethje as their fight of the year. And I love all those guys over there, but what were they watching? That fight, for the most part, as you mentioned earlier, George, was like a one-sided beating. It wasn't really all that great. It wasn't a bad fight, don't get me wrong, but it wasn't a back and forth. It wasn't dramatic. It didn't keep you on the edge of your seat the entire time. I think Rivovic versus Huber was the best fight by far in 2024, not only from a technical standpoint, but they were pitting up two prospects together. Young guys with a lot of power, striking. So Huber was kicking ass early. Rivovic comes back. It was at the Sphere. I mean, everything around it was just spectacular. It was a ridiculous fight. I also do want to highlight Brandon Royval versus Tatsuro Taira.
Yeah,
very good fight. People are forgetting about flyweights. It was in the Apex, so maybe that plays a factor. But man, that so Huber Rivovic fight was just spectacular for me. Hands down, that was a lock as well. Fight of the year.
Yeah, one other one that deserves a shout that somebody mentioned in the comments. I don't know if I would say it's the fight of the year from the competitive standpoint, but in terms of being engaging, was Pereira and Roundtree. Like I was glued to that one for the way that it was playing out. So just a shout out to Khalil for that.
Roundtree was up 2-1 going into round 4 before he got finished, right? On the judges' scorecards. I think I looked them up and that was the case. At least on 2 of them. For sure. So it was a bit of a comeback. In fact, that would hurt me when I was making Pereira my fighter of the year, because technically, he won 3 fights, but in one of them he was down, whereas Topuria was pretty much perfect from start to finish in both of his wins. But no, that was a great fight. I like it when it does go back and forth, but sometimes I feel like if you ask the common person, like here in Vegas on the Vegas Strip, hey, what was your fight of the year? They just think of that one image and that one highlight that gets played over and over. And to be fair, Holloway and Gaethje are huge names. So, but we move on.
That's why we're here. That's why we're here, to talk some sense into the common folk. Be like, look, Rivovic saw Huber. Go watch that. It was pretty fucking good.
Yeah, that's true. Upset of the year: Rigbrook defeated Anatoly Malikin, who, by the way, holds 3 titles over at one championship and was undefeated. And I think you are all finishes, and that's why it was a big deal. But I know a lot of people were like, "Who?" Goes, what did you think of this fight, and what did you think of this upset?
I thought it was insane. When you think of what Anatoly's been able to accomplish over there, he doesn't have one of those frames where you would say, okay, like maybe like a Pereira, right, where you could say I could see him winning in 3 different divisions. This dude's kind of like a little bit of a tree trunk, right? Toquinho. And for Rigbrook to come in there and do that, there was so much hype behind this guy. I thought it was amazing. And that was pretty damn shocking. What he did was pretty remarkable, dude.
Danny, did he deserve upset of the year in your eyes?
Yeah. And I was in charge of writing that up, and for me it was the biggest one. I know numerically, like odds wise, there were others that did quite well. Probably the one that comes to mind to most people would be Gabriela Fernandez defeating Wang.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Given the fact that it was like for the title, again, Malikin was undefeated. I think it was a 2-division champion. I don't know about 3.
No, he's 3.
I remember.
3.
Yeah, 3.
Yeah.
Okay, then I'm wrong there. also I remember as far as like at that time, like when you were talking about one championship, that was the name that kept like circling around. That's the guy. That's the best guy they have. How would he fare against UFC guys? This, and that. And on the opposite side, Rogue, he hasn't really been taken too seriously. Some of his fights have been kind of sloppy. I felt like he was kind of brought over because he just had a huge sort of social media following from his wrestling days in Senegal and this and that. And he was kind of just there for like freak fights. But lo and behold, little by little, this guy just kept getting better and kept proving people wrong. And now he is one championship's heavyweight champion, which is, a big deal.
Kind of like a Bob Sapp was to Pride, except this guy's got a winning record.
Yeah.
But he has the look for sure. Where's he from? Senegal?
Senegal. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they received him, man, like he was a hero. Well, he is. I mean, he beat an undefeated Russian fighter. And to be fair, at one championship, they used a hydrated weigh-in system. So basically, your heavyweight and your light heavyweight, they're already at heavyweights. They just have to stay hydrated, or at least when you compete as a light heavyweight. So you could probably walk around at 230, not have to suffer the weight cut to 205. I kind of like some of this, what they do over there. But that is the reason why Demetrius Johnson will never come back to flyweight, even if they gave him a lot of money. He says he's retired, but part of the reason he specifically said is, I'll never cut to 125, which he would have to do in the UFC. But if he came back at one, he could hydrate around the 135 to 140 mark and still compete and be considered a flyweight. I know I threw a lot at you guys here, but Nolan, you were cool with Rug?
Yeah, I was cool with it. There was really slim pickings this year, like Danny said. A lot of if you look at betting odds, a lot of the higher up, the ones that were bigger were like PFL prelims and LFA fights, and there was Dubin on Under Series that had a big knockout of Shannon Clark. So I was very much fine with this one. I think the stakes were high. The fight was, if you watch it, it was kind of a bad fight, and it was one of those ones where I think there were some rounds where kind of nothing happened. So going into the decision, you didn't really know who won. But it was, I mean, he is just because of who he is visually, just being just this absolute monster. Now he has some credentials as well to say, hey, I'm not just some big body that can toss people around. I'm an actual world champion in one of the major organizations. I think will be good for his stock, his brand, and who knows, man? Maybe sometime he'll become a free agent, and we'll see him in the UFC.
What about Nina Drama beating Joe Rogan at the World MMA Awards? That was kind of an upset, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was an upset.
How do you take down a guy that's got like 10 million listeners or something like that? Okay. I know I beat this to death, but wasn't Holloway over Gaethje an upset?
It was an upset. I mean, technically he was an underdog, but like, come on.
One of the best ones.
Like,
and
were
then
you
they
completely shocked at the idea? Like, no.
I'd like to go back to our page. Do you guys remember how we all predicted that fight? Was it unanimous Gaethje, or was there some Holloway love?
I think Farah, who was the winner for the picks.
Co-winner. How are you gonna do my man Cold Coffee like that?
Sorry. Where she was in the runnings. I think she picked. I think she picked Holloway.
Cold Coffee, I got your back, man. All right. Let's go on to the last one here. Comeback of the year. Neil Magny defeated Mike Mallet. Now there's comeback in a fight, comeback in a career, or any other type of setback. Nolan, you cool with this?
Yeah, I was cool with this. This was one of the ones that I wrote up, and I think if you watch the fight over, the UFC posted the clips of their nominees for their comeback of the year, and if you watch it, you're like, oh, that's kind of cool. It's just like Neil ground and pounding. But if you watch the whole sequence, I mean, that fight was just rinse and repeat. You get into the third round where it's kind of, again, not the most entertaining. You're like, I know what this ending's going to be. Like, we've seen this for the last 13 minutes. Like, and so for Neil to kind of find that like third wind and just totally turn the tables in enemy territory, and take out a guy that had a lot of hype behind him. He was flying up the ladder. So totally cool with this one. I think it was just an amazing veteran performance from Neil Magny.
Goes?
I think when you consider what the UFC thinks of Neil Magny and where they usually put him versus another fighter, you see where Malat was. For him to kind of overcome all of those odds on top of what was going on in the fight, I think he not only deserves it a little, he deserves it a lot.
Danny Segura.
Yeah, the fight was crazy. I mean, I remember Mike Malott at the time was kind of being pushed for it to be kind of like the face of Canadian MMA or one of the faces, and that really took some wind out of his sails. Yeah, that was a huge, huge comeback, and shouts out to Neil Magny, who till this day keeps taking on those young up and comers and saying, saying yes to every single fight they offer him.
Mm-hmm. I'm gonna throw one at you guys. Tell me what you think. Here I go, disrupting everything again. But I think Mark Coleman was the comeback of the year, and I'll tell you why. Just kind of phased out of MMA. He's had all his health issues. He's always had a health issue. Comes back from that. He's a hero and saves his parents. He gets a chance to belt Max Holloway at UFC 300, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then he wins all these awards at the end of the year. I don't know, man. I liked his comeback. All the love Mark Coleman got. He got the inspirational award. What's it called, Goes? The one that Rob Hewitt gives away. Like it's
I don't
kind of
remember the exact title,
a
but
long
yeah.
time achievement award. But I for some reason I like his comeback into our sport, which I know we didn't define this one, but because we were kind of hurting, like there wasn't as many great comebacks. I just really like the comeback of Mark Coleman overall, man. He's been getting a lot of love at events and everything.
Yeah, he
That-
deserves something.
That would be more appropriate for comeback fighter of the year.
Yeah, well, our comeback of the year, isn't it defined as it could be from a fight, from like a setback, like maybe like what Ngannou went through and losing his kid, or maybe a career skid where you go 0-4 and the next year you come back and go 4-0. I thought it was like something like that. I don't know.
Moicano is another guy that kind of reinvented himself a little bit.
Yeah. Good stuff, guys.